Thanks for joining us for the Five Smooth Stones podcast. Over the last 2 years, we've posted lots of material about passage in the Old Testament, Deuteronomy 6, verses 4 through 9, and talked about 5 qualities that we referred to as the Five Smooth Stones: relationship, experience, truth, discussion, response. And we've done a lot of Bible studies and so on. And what we're going to do over the next 5 weeks is interview a colleague of mine regarding those 5 qualities who's got a lot of children's ministry experience and just talk about how those work in real children's ministry experience. So Jan Kraushaar is joining us today, and I know this isn't on our interview list, but tell our audience how we got to know each other and what your history is, especially with children in children's ministry work.
Okay. Well, I started working in children's ministry in 1978 when my husband and I were part of Voyagers Bible Church. Mm-hmm. And a little while...
It's like close to 50 years ago.
Yes. So a little while into that, we had a children's pastor named Wanda Parker. Uh-huh. And we basically used the 5 elements of children's ministry that EGM uses. And down the road in 2002 maybe, you were needing some curriculum. Mm-hmm. with the help of Dr. Terry Gunlock. So we met, and you asked if I would help write a pilot study.
Had we met before that at all, ever?
You had preached at Voyagers a couple times, so I knew who you were, but I didn't.
And we both knew Wanda, of course.
We both knew Wanda. Mm-hmm. Wanda actually worked with Daniel, and that's a fun story sometime. Oh, that's where Daniel started his adventure with children's ministry.
So you've been writing curriculum with EGM for the last 20 years and more, and then you're involved, I know recently, tell a little bit about the group you were working with. I think it was a homeschool group, and you're doing some teaching there. What was that story there?
We wrote a unit on the I Ams. Jesus is the great I am. Yep. And so we needed to pilot it, and I found a group of mostly girls and a few boys in a homeschool environment, and the mom gave me permission to work with them for 8 weeks, and it was really a great blessing. It was so much fun.
That's like a big age range, right?
There was. They were from 2 all the way to 9 or 10. And so it was very challenging, but we had a great time. And I mostly let the 2-year-old just run around and focused on the older ones.
All right. Well, this week's focus is on the first quality that you find in Deuteronomy 6, 4 through 9. And it's relational ministry, the idea of building relationships in our ministry, not just with the children, but with each other, the people who are teaching, and among the children themselves. So let's talk about that, Jan. So tell me about your experience with relational ministry, and what's that look like? Like when you're doing a group like that with those wide range of kids, what's relational ministry look like?
Well, relationship with the children is absolutely the foundation of all of ministry. Right. And getting to know the children and having the children get to know me and having the children get to know each other is really important. Mm-hmm. And Jesus wants us to know him in a deep and relational way, and it's all about knowing Jesus and growing in God and his ways. So yeah, it's everything. So
like in a group like that, because I've had, like my church has a big range of kids and ages in the children's ministry because it's a really small church. How do you, what's the difference like having a relationship like with a 2-year-old and a relationship with a 9-year-old in that group? What's that look like in terms of the differences there when you think back practically over?
Well, the differences are vast between a toddler and a 4th grader. And that's why small groups are so important in children's ministry, age level groups, because the age level differences are vast from one grade to the next.
And I found like with little preschoolers, you can talk about things, but it's basically the relationships more of, do they feel loved, accepted, cared for? And as they get older, the relationship can take on more learning about like their family and their siblings and things like that. Okay, so we've taught this material out of Deuteronomy 6 for so long. Oh, and sorry, I got carpal tunnel syndrome, surgery on my wrist, so it might look a little weird here. Sorry. So we've taught this a lot, and I've heard some people say over the years that they felt like relational ministry was actually sort of the foundation for all 5 of the principles in Deuteronomy 6. And that, Bible teaching, small group discussions, the response activity, even the experiential activity, all rests on having a relational environment. What do you think about that? You agree with that, and how so? And
I do agree with it because when the children first arrive, you're doing a fun relational activity, and that's the beginning.
Yeah.
But every other component, the experience, the truth, the discussion, and the response, all are keyed to the relationship that they have with their leader and with each other.
Yeah.
So if they're in a small group discussion, then hopefully they're talking to each other as well as to the leader.
Or they're not going to be open and talk if they don't feel like
Exactly.
they can or free to do that.
And if the leader isn't vulnerable in sharing his or her own life, then they're not going to be vulnerable. And so it's really all the components of the children's lesson is all about relationships.
Relational ministry. I agree. So when you've been in lots of churches, especially traveling with EGM overseas to Egypt, Romania, and in the U.S. in different churches, your kids' churches I know you've been to. What's a non-relational ministry look like? Like, when you go into a setting, and what are things you see that make you think this isn't really a good relational environment?
Well, I think the thing I see often in America in particular,
Yeah.
not so much in the other countries, but in America, I see a lot of churches that have gone to a children's church model. Mm-hmm. So all ages from kindergarten or first grade through 5th or 6th grade are all together in one room. And there's fun singing, and then there's either the children's pastor or an adult will teach the Bible lesson, and maybe there's a few activities like I can't remember what you call it, where there's an object lesson.
Yeah.
And something where the children are all sitting, but they're really not participating. They're just listening and observing. And so there's really no relational activities going on. And so relationships not built.
When you have so many kids, it's hard. And they're so, the ages,
Different,
as we were just talking
yeah.
about, are so different. When you have like a 5-year-old and a 5th grader in the same group, it's hard to be relational.
Developmentally, they're just very different. And usually then the leader has to gear it to the middle, about 2nd grade. So then the older kids aren't getting really what they need, and the younger kids aren't getting what they need.
Right.
So it's not the best way to do it.
I agree. So what about, okay, so that's one problem. Have you seen churches where the actual teaching of the material takes precedent over the children, the actual relational ministry, where there's I felt like I've done that myself, where you get so caught up in doing the lesson itself that getting the activity accomplished and finishing it and then get on to the next one because it's going to be great, and pretty soon you're not really. Have you seen that?
Oh, of course, and we've all done it too.
Yeah.
I think it's program over people.
Right, that's a great way to say it.
Yeah, so that can happen, but I think if you know your children and you have a relationship with them, then you have a better idea of what they need. And when you get to each activity, you're drawing them out and getting them to talk and share, and that's where the transformation happens.
Yep. And now when you think about like the response activity, if you're trying to help kids respond to the Word of God that you've taught in real life, if you don't know what real life is for them, you can't do that really well. And knowing what real life is means having a relationship with them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So one of the big points of focus in children's ministry these days is having fun. And of course, I like to have fun a lot, as you know. Where's the interface between having fun and relational ministry, and what's that look like? And how do you, I guess, can you have relational ministry and not have fun? Can you have fun and it's not really relational? What are your thoughts about that?
Hopefully your relationship activities that you design will be fun, but you definitely can have fun without it being relational. So you can do a fun game or a fun activity that the children really love, and they don't get to know each other better, they don't get to know the leader better, and there's no relationship going on. They're just playing a fun game.
Right.
But by contrast, the relational activity, if it's designed to get to know the children and each other better, then hopefully it will be fun. And actually, children love getting to know each other. So in and of itself, it's if it's relational, it's going to be fun.
The thing, too, that's really hard, I think, is that sometimes, you're having fun, and I really like to have fun and all that. And then you find out, like, a child's not doing well. Like, something happened that's not good, and you're so busy having fun, which connects with, like, 9 out of 10 kids. But the one child that it doesn't, you can kind of, that's not good. Because then they feel like church is not really sensitive to where they're at.
True.
Well, if a children's worker called Jan Kraushaar up and said, I heard you and I really do want to have a relational ministry and maybe I don't, what steps would you encourage them to take to build a more relational environment in their church? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think the first thing that needs to be done is communicating a vision, a biblical vision of children's ministry to your pastors, all the way from the children's ministry working with preschoolers all the way up through adults, really. And the whole idea of the importance of relationship in children's ministry and communicating that vision to the congregation is really vital. And once the people in your church are excited about that and they embrace that vision, they're going to want to get involved. The thing about relational children's ministry is you need a lot of people. The reason that churches do the children's church model is you need the pastor and a little bit of worship singers and then
The
crowd control.
Right.
And then that's all you need. So you really can run the whole thing on a very small number of adults.
Right.
But a relational ministry, you need small groups and you need probably two leaders with each group.
Yeah, and I think you have to find people that actually, it's not a program issue. Of all the issues we talk about experiential activities and Bible teaching and small group discussion and response activities. The relational ministry, you can have we create relational activities in the curriculum, but there's a part of it that's just you have to be somebody who loves children and wants to have a relationship with them. And you got to have a few people like that. But I think churches have them all.
Yeah, I think even if people don't believe that they're gifted in children's ministry, you have people who really care about children.
And they're great with children.
And they're
you just
good
don't
with
think
kids.
they're like the teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think you need to do is so many churches do a rotational ministry where they have a group of adults that maybe check in once a month. And I really believe, I remember when Wanda Parker told our church, I'm sorry, but we're not doing rotation anymore. People will commit to every Sunday. We did a 9-month commitment, so then those leaders had time off.
Relational ministry vision. It wasn't
exactly. It was
some
in
punitive
response.
thing or whatever.
No, it was entirely the vision that drove that idea. And we were young, so we said okay, and all the families participated and were involved in children's ministry, and everyone, all ages got involved.
And I remember, we had a couple at the church I was serving at that time, and he was like a businessman, and it was back when people wore coat and tie to church in Southern California, and his wife was like a trained teacher. So she would do the lesson plan and get everything organized like you would, and then he would just show up and hang out with the kids, and they'd crawl all over him. And I remember he'd take his coat off and the kids would crawl all over him. And I remember coming in the classroom one time and he was laying on the floor and all the boys are laying next to him and they're making a sizzling sound.
Oh, the bacon.
Yeah, they're playing bacon, acting like they're bacon. And, he, in the end, I think he had just as big an impact on those kids as she did because of the relational connection that he made with so many of those boys. And girls too, but I think a lot of those boys would remember him and the impact he had, even though it was all just a relational focus.
I had a group of, when I was elementary director, my husband, Kurt, who doesn't necessarily think he's geared to do children's ministry, he and another fellow in our church did the 5th and 6th graders. And at the time, there were about 60 of them, and it was a huge class. Yeah. But they related to them by playing rollerblade hockey in the gym. Right. And they had activities where the kids did the things that they, sports things that they loved.
And they were probably like heroes.
Oh yeah, and they developed a really close relationship with all those kids, boys and girls.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for talking about relational ministry today. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Five Smooth Stones podcast, and you can learn more about relational ministry on our website at www.egminstitute.org.